What would you do if your maid placed a single bullet on the counter like a warning bell and said softly, "Tonight you choose. Stay quiet, or make him come home angry"? Do you stay silent to keep the peace for the next hour, or risk everything by making one call that could start a blood feud in your own living room before midnight? Wind lashes the penthouse windows hard enough to make the glass sing. Christmas lights blink steady, cheerful, wrong, while the city below keeps moving like nothing is about to happen. Callista, Callie Mercer, stands in the kitchen with one hand braced on the counter, the other pressed to her 7-month belly, counting breaths the way people count down seconds before impact. Across from her, the maid, Talia Moretti, places a single bullet on the marble as carefully as a hostess, setting out a mint, tiny, clean, final. The elevator panel down the hall flashes once, then goes dark. Somewhere inside the walls, a lock clicks, then another. Talia doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. "If you scream," she says, almost gentle, "he comes home angry." Callie's phone sits face down, like it's been punished. Her coat is gone from the hook. Her spare keys aren't in the bowl. The Christmas tree keeps blinking like it's mocking her, and the clock over the stove keeps pushing the moment closer. Then the intercom crackles one breath of static like someone just tested the line from downstairs. "Hello, beautiful family. My daughter challenged me to hit 1,000 subscribers, so now you're all involved. Let's show her that nothing is impossible with a family behind you. Subscribe and comment below with where you're watching from. I want to know, because seeing all your locations reminds me that stories connect us all, no matter the distance. Let's continue." The bullet sat on the marble like a period at the end of a sentence Callie hadn't finished reading. Small, brass, catching the Christmas lights in a way that made it almost beautiful, which was somehow worse than if it had been ugly. She stared at it while her daughter kicked against her ribs, tiny feet pushing outward like she was trying to run before she even had legs strong enough to carry her. Talia stood on the other side of the kitchen island, hands folded, expression serene. She'd worked for the Giordani family for 11 years longer than Callie had known her husband existed. Her uniform was pressed, her hair pinned back, her smile the kind that belonged on a woman offering tea and biscuits, not threats wrapped in silk. "You understand," Talia said quietly, "that this is a kindness." "A kindness." Callie's voice came out steadier than she expected. "You're locking me in my own home on Christmas Eve and calling it a kindness. I'm giving you a choice. That's more than most people in your position receive." Talia gestured toward the bullet. "One option leads to a quiet evening. The other leads to noise. Noise brings him home early. And when Mr. Giordani comes home early, he comes home unsettled." Another lock clicked somewhere in the apartment. The sound traveled through the walls like a heartbeat, mechanical, inevitable. Callie counted 3 so far. The front door, the service entrance, and now, probably, the door to the stairwell she'd never once used but had memorized anyway, because pregnant women in mafia households learned to map their exits the way sailors learned to read stars. "What do you want from me? Tonight? Nothing. Sit. Rest. Let the evening pass." Talia's gaze dropped to Callie's belly, and something flickered behind her eyes. Not warmth, not cruelty, but calculation. "You're 7 months along. Stress isn't good for the baby. Don't talk about my baby. She's not just yours anymore, Mrs. Giordani. Surely you understand that by now." The intercom crackled again. One burst of static, then silence. Someone testing the system. Someone making sure all the pieces were in place before the clock ran out on whatever countdown Callie hadn't been told about. She thought about Raffaele, her husband of 14 months, the man who'd swept into her life like a storm she'd mistaken for shelter. He had hands that could crush a man's throat, and eyes that went soft when he felt their daughter move beneath his palm. He called her Piccola Stella, little star, and he'd killed 2 men in the first year of their marriage for looking at her too long. She'd told herself the violence was separate, compartmentalized, something that happened outside these walls, in a world she didn't have to see. The bullet on the counter said otherwise. "My phone." Callie kept her voice even. "Where is it?" "Charging in the bedroom. You can check it later." "My coat." "At the cleaners." The weather turned. "I thought you'd want it freshened." "My keys." "In the drawer where they belong." Talia's smile widened by a fraction. "Everything is exactly where it should be, Mrs. Giordani, including you." Callie's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. 28 weeks. Her daughter was the size of an eggplant now, according to the apps she checked obsessively at 3 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come. She had fingernails, eyelashes, a heartbeat that showed up strong and steady on every ultrasound, demanding to be heard. This baby was the only thing Callie had done right in 3 years, the only thing that belonged entirely to her. Even if even if Raffaele believed otherwise, she would not let anyone take that from her. Not tonight. Not ever. Fine. She stepped back from the counter, hands raised slightly, the universal gesture of surrender. I'll sit. I'll rest. Whatever you want. Talia studied her for a long moment. Then she picked up the bullet, slipped it into her apron pocket, and nodded once. Wise choice. The intercom crackled a third time. And this time, a voice came through, distorted, unrecognizable, but unmistakably male. She's secured. Moving to phase 2. The Christmas music died mid-note, cutting Bing Crosby off before he could finish dreaming of white. Callie stood in the living room, watching the smart speakers blink once, twice, then go dark. The sudden silence pressed against her eardrums like a physical weight, broken only by the wind still hurling itself against the windows and the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She counted to 10. Then 20. The music didn't return. Technical difficulties. Talia appeared in the doorway, a dish towel draped over her arm like she'd been interrupted mid-task. The building system has been unreliable all week. I'll have maintenance look at it tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word landed wrong. Too casual. Too certain. Like tomorrow was already written in a script Callie hadn't been allowed to read. She moved toward the hallway, keeping her pace slow, her body language soft. Pregnant women were supposed to waddle, supposed to be tired, supposed to need rest. She'd learned to weaponize that assumption months ago, letting people underestimate her while she memorized codes, schedules. The subtle shift in Raffaele's voice when he was lying. The first door she tried was the service entrance. Locked. Not just locked, sealed with something heavy on the other side. Something that made the handle refuse to turn more than a centimeter before catching. Mrs. Giordani. Talia's voice floated down the hall. You should sit down. Your ankles must be swelling. Callie ignored her. She moved to the next door, the one that led to the private stairwell connecting their penthouse to the parking garage 18 floors below. Raffaele had shown it to her on their first night here, his hand warm on the small of her back, his voice low and reassuring. Emergency exit, Piccola. Just in case. The handle turned. The door didn't move. She pressed her shoulder against it, testing. Something had been wedged into the frame from the outside. She could feel the resistance, deliberate and precise. This wasn't a malfunction. This was architecture. The Christmas tree lights flickered. Not randomly in a pattern. 3 short blinks, pause. 3 long, pause. 3 short again. SOS in light form, except reversed, like someone was mocking the very concept of distress signals. Callie's phone was in the bedroom. Talia had said so, which meant it was either dead, disabled, or monitored. Her laptop was in Raffaele's office, behind a door that required a code she'd never been given. The landline in the kitchen, did they even still have a landline? She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen anyone use it. She walked back to the living room, lowering herself onto the leather sofa with a grace that cost her everything. Her daughter shifted inside her, pressing against her bladder, and Callie placed both hands on her belly like a shield. Who else is in the building tonight? Talia had followed her, silent as a shadow. The usual staff. Security on the ground floor. Mr. Giordani's driver waiting in the garage. Marco? Yes, Marco. Something flickered across Talia's face there and gone before Callie could name it. He's very loyal. Loyal. Another word that meant something different in this world. Loyal to whom? To Raffaele? To the family? To whoever was running phase 2 of whatever nightmare Callie had stumbled into? She thought about the last time she'd seen Marco. 3 days ago, helping her carry grocery bags from the car even though she'd insisted she could manage. He'd smiled at her, asked about the baby, told her his wife was expecting their third. Normal conversation, human connection. But he hadn't met her eyes. Not once. I'd like some tea. Callie kept her voice light. Chamomile, if we have it. Of course. Talia moved toward the kitchen. Anything else? No, just some quiet. To think. She waited until Talia's footsteps faded, then reached between the sofa cushions where she'd hidden a burner phone 6 weeks ago. Her fingers found fabric, foam, the wooden frame beneath. Nothing else. Someone had been through her hiding spots. Someone who knew exactly where to look. The elevator panel at the end of the hall flickered to life, one brief pulse of green, then went dark again. And Callie realized, with a clarity that turned her blood to ice, that she wasn't just locked in, she was being watched. The coat was the first thing she'd noticed missing. Now Callie stood in the bedroom closet, running her hands along empty hangers, counting the gaps like wounds. Her winter jacket gone. The cashmere wrap Raffaele had given her for their anniversary gone. The oversized cardigan she wore when the penthouse got cold at night. The one with pockets deep enough to hold her phone, her keys, 100 small escapes gone. She moved to the dresser. Her passport was still there, tucked into the velvet jewelry box, where she'd hidden it behind her grandmother's pearls. But when she opened it, she found the pages blank, not missing, replaced. Someone had swapped her real passport for an empty decoy, and they'd done it carefully enough that she wouldn't notice unless she checked. Her hands were shaking now. She pressed them flat against the dresser's surface, forcing herself to breathe. Think, Callie. Think like he taught you. Raffaele had spent months showing her how his world worked. The coded conversations, the backup plans, the way every room had 2 exits, and every ally had a price. She'd absorbed it like a student cramming for an exam she never wanted to take, telling herself it was just knowledge, just preparation, just in case. In case had arrived. She checked the nightstand next. Her phone was there, exactly where Talia had said it would be. Screen dark, charging cable coiled beside it like a sleeping snake. She picked it up and pressed the power button. Nothing. She held it longer. Still nothing. Dead or disabled in a way that looked like dead. The bathroom yielded more absences. Her prenatal vitamins were still lined up on the counter, but the small medical kit she kept under the sink was empty. Bandages, antiseptic, the tiny scissors she used to trim loose threads all removed. Even the tweezers were gone, as if someone had decided that anything sharp, anything useful, anything that could become a tool was now contraband. Mrs. Giordani? Talia's voice came from the bedroom doorway. Your tea is ready. Callie didn't turn around. Where's my emergency bag? I'm sorry? The bag I keep in the hall closet. Black leather, packed with essentials. She'd assembled it in her 4th month, after a nightmare that left her gasping at 3 a.m. Cash, clothes, copies of important documents, a prepaid phone she'd bought with cash at a bodega downtown. Enough to run. Enough to survive. Where is it? Silence stretched between them. When Talia spoke again, her voice had lost its gentle veneer. That bag contained items that could be misinterpreted. Mr. Giordani asked me to secure it until after the holidays. Callie turned slowly, one hand braced against the bathroom doorframe. Raffaele knows about the bag? Mr. Giordani knows everything that happens in this house. Talia's smile returned, thin and cold. Surely you didn't think otherwise. The baby kicked hard, insistent, almost angry. Callie pressed her palm against the spot and felt her daughter's heel pushing back, demanding attention. I know, she thought. I know. We're getting out of here. But how? She walked past Talia into the living room, accepting the teacup that appeared in her hands without really seeing it. The liquid was warm, fragrant, completely unthreatening. She didn't drink it, couldn't risk it. Whatever was happening tonight required her alert, aware, ready. The clock over the stove read 8:47 p.m., 3 hours and 13 minutes until midnight, 3 hours and 13 minutes until Christmas. She thought about what else might be missing. The things she hadn't checked yet, because she hadn't thought to look. The spare key hidden in the potted plant by the elevator, the cash she'd taped to the back of the bathroom mirror, the letter she'd written to her mother, explaining everything, sealed and stamped and ready to mail if she ever got desperate enough. All of it would be gone. She knew that now. Someone had walked through her life with surgical precision, removing every escape hatch, every safety net, every possibility of flight. They'd left her the pregnancy vitamins and the tea and the Christmas tree blinking in the corner. They'd left her the appearance of normalcy, while stripping away everything that made normalcy real. Callie set down the untouched tea and looked at Talia, who stood by the window like a sentinel. What happens at midnight? Talia's expression didn't change. Christmas happens, Mrs. Giordani, like it does every year. But her eyes said something different. Her eyes said, you'll find out soon enough. Talia checked her watch at 9:15 p.m. A small gesture, automatic, barely noticeable except Callie had been watching her for the past half hour, cataloging every movement, every glance, every breath that came a beat too fast. The maid was nervous. Not afraid, not guilty, but nervous. The kind of nervous that came from waiting for something specific to happen. You keep looking at the time. Callie shifted on the sofa, adjusting a pillow behind her lower back. Are we expecting someone? Mr. Giordani will be home when his business concludes. Talia smoothed her apron. These things rarely run on schedule. What things? Family matters. The word family landed heavy, deliberate. In Raffaele's world, family didn't mean blood. It meant allegiance, territory, the invisible lines that determined who lived and who disappeared. Nothing for you to worry about. But Callie was already worrying. She'd been worrying since the day she'd married into the Giordani name, since the first time she'd seen her husband come home with blood on his cuffs and a smile on his face. She'd told herself she could handle it. She'd told herself love was enough. Love was never enough. Not in houses like this. She stood slowly, one hand on her belly, and walked toward the kitchen. Talia followed at a distance, not close enough to crowd, but close enough to intervene. The dynamic had shifted in the past hour. Callie was no longer the lady of the house being served tea. She was cargo being monitored. "I'm hungry." She opened the refrigerator, scanning the shelves without really seeing them. "The baby wants something sweet. There's fruit in the crisper. And I made tiramisu this morning." Callie pulled out a container of strawberries, then paused. The magnetic notepad on the refrigerator door was gone. The one she used to write grocery lists, reminders, the occasional note to herself when her pregnancy brain turned words into fog. Another small absence. Another closed door. "Talia." She kept her voice casual, curious. "How long have you worked for the Giordanis?" 11 years this February. And before that? A pause. Almost imperceptible, but Callie caught it. "I worked for another family. In Napoli." "Which family? Does it matter?" Talia's tone hardened at the edges. "I serve the Giordanis now." "That's all that matters." Callie bit into a strawberry, letting the juice run down her chin before wiping it away. Her mind was racing, piecing together fragments she'd ignored for months. Talia had arrived in the household 3 weeks after the wedding. Raffaele had introduced her as a gift from his mother, a trusted servant to help the new bride adjust. But Raffaele's mother had been dead for 6 years. "The tiramisu sounds wonderful." Callie closed the refrigerator and smiled. "Maybe later. Right now I need to use the bathroom." She walked down the hall without waiting for permission, feeling Talia's gaze burning into her back. The bathroom door had a lock, a simple push button that wouldn't stop anyone determined, but might buy her 30 seconds of privacy. She pressed it and heard the click echo off the tile. 30 seconds. What could she do in 30 seconds? The window above the toilet was small, frosted, painted shut years before she'd moved in. No escape there. The medicine cabinet was empty except for toothpaste and mouthwash. The drawers held nothing but cotton balls and a hairbrush. Then she saw it. The air vent above the shower. The screws were loose, she'd noticed weeks ago. Mentioned it to maintenance. Never followed up. The cover was barely attached, hanging crooked like a door left ajar. Callie climbed onto the edge of the bathtub, balancing carefully, her belly making every movement awkward. She reached up and pulled the vent cover free. Inside, wedged against the ductwork, was a small black case she didn't recognize. She opened it with trembling fingers. Documents. A new passport reel this time, with her photo but a different name. $3,000 in cash. A disposable phone, fully charged. And a note, handwritten in script she didn't recognize. "When you're ready to leave him, call the number saved in contacts. Don't trust the staff. Don't trust his men. Midnight is the deadline. After that, you belong to them." The bathroom door handle rattled. "Mrs. Giordani?" Talia's voice was ice now, the gentle pretense completely abandoned. "Open the door. Now." Callie shoved the case into the waistband of her maternity pants, pulled her sweater down to cover it, and flushed the toilet. She checked her reflection, pale, terrified, but holding together, and opened the door with a smile that cost her everything. "Sorry. Pregnancy bladder. You know how it is." Talia stared at her for a long moment, eyes narrow, searching. Then she stepped aside. "Of course. Take your time." But they both knew time was the one thing Callie didn't have. "We're pushing to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your support to keep bringing you these intense stories. Hit subscribe and let me keep you company with a new story every day." Callie shoved the phone beneath her pillow and threw herself onto the bed, curling onto her side with one arm draped over her belly. She closed her eyes and forced her breathing to slow deep, even, the rhythm of exhausted sleep. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain it would give her away. The door opened. Footsteps crossed the carpet, soft and deliberate. She felt Talia's presence like a weight pressing against her skin, hovering at the edge of the bed, watching, waiting. Seconds stretched into eternity. "Mrs. Giordani?" Talia's voice was barely a whisper. Testing. Callie didn't move, didn't breathe, kept her face slack, her body limp, every muscle screaming with the effort of pretending. More footsteps, the rustle of fabric, then a sound that turned her blood to ice, the soft slide of a drawer opening. Talia was searching the nightstand, fingers moving through the contents with practiced efficiency. Callie had hidden the passport decoy there, the dead phone, the small deceptions she'd been meant to find. Nothing that mattered. Nothing that would save her. The drawer closed. Footsteps retreated. The door clicked shut. Callie counted to 60 before she opened her eyes. The room was empty, shadows pooling in the corners where the Christmas lights from the living room couldn't reach. She sat up slowly, retrieving the phone from beneath the pillow, checking the screen. No new messages, just those 4 words burning in her memory. "We're coming. Stay alive." But who was we? And how had they known to plant a phone in her bathroom vent weeks before tonight? She didn't have time to solve that puzzle. The clock on the nightstand read 10:23 p.m., 97 minutes until midnight. The documents in the case were still pressed against her hip. She pulled them out now, spreading them across the mattress in the dim light. The passport looked authentic, her photo, a name she didn't recognize, stamps from countries she'd never visited. Someone had built her a new identity. Someone had planned this escape long before she'd known she needed one. The cash was real. She counted it twice. $3,000 in worn bills, nothing sequential, nothing traceable, but it was the final item in the case that stopped her cold. A photograph. Polaroid, slightly faded, the edges soft with age. It showed a woman Callie had never seen, dark hair, sharp cheekbones, eyes that held the same desperate fear Callie saw in her own mirror every morning. The woman was visibly pregnant, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other reaching toward the camera like she was trying to grab hold of whoever stood behind it. On the back, written in the same handwriting as the note, "She didn't make it. You still can." Callie's hands trembled. Another woman. Another pregnancy. Another trap disguised as a marriage. How many had there been before her? A sound from the hallway, voices, low and urgent. Callie shoved everything back into the case and slid it under the mattress, positioning herself against the headboard like she'd just woken from a nap. The bedroom door swung open without a knock. Talia stood in the doorway, but she wasn't alone. A man Callie didn't recognize flanked her, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the dark suit of Raffaele's security team, but with a face she'd never seen at any family gathering. His eyes swept the room once, clinical and cold, then settled on her belly. "She's further along than the file said." His voice was flat, accented. "Eastern European, maybe. That changes the timeline." "The timeline is fixed." Talia's response was sharp. "Midnight. As planned. If the delivery is complicated, it won't be." Talia stepped into the room, her smile returning like a mask sliding into place. "Mrs. Giordani is healthy. The baby is healthy. Everything will proceed exactly as Mr. Giordani arranged." Delivery. The word hit Callie like a fist to the chest. They weren't planning to keep her pregnant. They were planning to take the baby. Tonight. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, fingers spread wide, as if she could somehow shield her daughter from what was coming. The baby kicked in, response strong, defiant, alive. "I want to speak to my husband." Callie's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Now. Mr. Giordani will be here soon." Talia gestured to the stranger, who retreated into the hallway. "Until then, I suggest you rest. You'll need your strength." The door closed. The lock engaged from the outside. Callie pressed both hands against her belly and whispered the only promise she had left. "I won't let them take you. Whatever it costs me." The printer in Raffaele's office hummed to life at 10:47 p.m. Callie heard it through the bedroom wall, a sound so ordinary it shouldn't have meant anything. Except nothing in this apartment was ordinary anymore. She pressed her ear against the plaster, listening to the mechanical whir, the soft thunk of paper landing in the tray, then silence. She had to see what they'd printed. The bedroom door was locked from outside, but the lock was electronic part of the smart home system Raffaele had installed when they'd moved in. He'd shown her the override code once, laughing, telling her it was for emergencies. She'd memorized it because that's what she did now. Memorized everything, trusted nothing. The keypad beside the door glowed faint blue in the darkness. Callie entered the code, their wedding date, because Raffaele was sentimental about things that didn't matter, and held her breath. The lock clicked open. She eased into the hallway, bare feet silent on the hardwood, one hand braced against the wall for balance. 28 weeks pregnant and sneaking through her own home like a thief. The absurdity of it almost made her laugh. Almost. Talia's voice drifted from the kitchen, speaking to someone on the phone, words too low to catch. The stranger was nowhere in sight. Vincent still stood by the elevator, his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension he couldn't hide. Raffaele's office was 12 steps away. Callie counted each one. The door was ajar. She slipped inside and closed it behind her, not daring to turn on the light. The city's glow filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in shades of blue and silver. Christmas lights from the building across the street blinked in slow rhythm, illuminating the printer on Raffaele's desk. One sheet of paper sat in the tray. Callie picked it up with trembling fingers, tilting it toward the window to read. It was a medical consent form. Her name at the top, her signature at the bottom, except she'd never signed it. The handwriting was close, frighteningly close, but the loops were wrong, the pressure too, even. A forgery. The form authorized an emergency cesarean section to be performed at a private medical facility. No hospital name, no doctor's credentials, just a blank space where the location should be and tonight's date printed in bold. They weren't just taking her baby. They were cutting her open to do it. Callie's knees buckled. She caught herself on the edge of the desk, breathing through the panic that threatened to swallow her whole. Her daughter kicked once, twice, 3 times, as if sensing her mother's terror and fighting back against it. Think, you have to think. The form was evidence. Proof of what they were planning. If she could get it to someone, the police, a lawyer, anyone outside this building. But her phone was dead, and the burner was for emergencies only. One call, maybe one text. She couldn't waste it on a photograph of a document that might not matter if she didn't survive the night. She folded the paper and tucked it into her waistband beside the case, then turned to leave. Raffaele's computer screen flickered. She froze. The screensaver had been running a slow cascade of family photos she'd chosen herself, back when she still believed in the life they were building. But now the screen showed something else. An email, already open, timestamp from 3 hours ago. She shouldn't read it. She should leave, go back to the bedroom, pretend she'd never been here. She read it anyway. The subject line was 2 words. Final arrangements. The body was worse. Package secured. Medical team en route. Extraction at midnight. Primary asset to be retained for 48 hours post-procedure, then relocated per original agreement. Secondary asset infant, transferred to Giordani custody immediately. No complications anticipated. Moretti confirms cooperation. Callie read it twice. 3 times. The words blurred together, rearranging themselves into a horror she couldn't escape. Primary asset. That was her. Secondary asset. That was her daughter. Relocated, retained, transferred. She wasn't a wife. She'd never been a wife. She was a vessel. A means to an end. And once her usefulness expired, she would be relocated, whatever that meant. She suspected it meant a shallow grave somewhere no one would think to look. The office door swung open. Talia stood in the doorway, her face carved from stone, the gentle pretense completely gone. "You shouldn't be in here, Mrs. Giordani." Callie straightened her spine, lifted her chin, met Talia's eyes without flinching. "No," she said quietly. "I shouldn't be in any of this." Talia moved into the office with the controlled grace of someone who had cornered prey before. She didn't rush, didn't need to. The door clicked shut behind her, and Callie heard the lock engage, a soft sound that echoed like a gunshot in the silence. "You've been busy." Talia's gaze swept from Callie's face to the computer screen, still glowing with the damning email. "I underestimated you. That won't happen again." "Who sent that email?" Callie kept her voice steady, even as her heart threatened to crack her ribs. "Who's behind this?" "You already know the answer. Raffaele, her husband, the man who'd held her while she cried over morning sickness, who'd painted the nursery himself because he wanted their daughter to know her father's hands had built something beautiful. The man who'd looked her in the eyes every single day and lied. He wouldn't. The words came out before she could stop them, desperate, childish. The last gasp of a woman who'd spent 14 months believing in a fairy tale written by wolves. "He loves me." Talia's laugh was soft, almost pitying. "He loves what you carry. There's a difference." The baby shifted inside her, pressing against her ribs like she was trying to climb higher, away from the danger she couldn't see but somehow sensed. Callie wrapped her arms around her belly, a gesture that had become instinct over the past 7 months. "What happens after midnight? You already read the email. I want to hear you say it." Talia studied her for a long moment. Then she crossed to the window, staring out at the city lights below, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. "The Giordani family needs an heir. A legitimate heir, born within marriage, documented and undeniable. That's you, or rather, that's what's inside you. And me? You were always temporary, Mrs. Giordani." Talia turned back to face her, and for the first time, Callie saw something almost like regret in her eyes. A vessel, carefully selected, carefully managed, carefully discarded when the time came. Carefully selected. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling outward into implications Callie couldn't bear to examine. Their meeting at the charity gala, had that been arranged? Their whirlwind courtship? The proposal after only 3 months, had all of it been orchestrated? There were others. Callie's voice was barely a whisper. Before me. Talia didn't answer. She didn't need to. The photograph in Callie's waistband burned against her skin. The dark-haired woman with the desperate eyes, the hand reaching toward the camera, the words on the back. She didn't make it. How many? Enough. Talia moved toward her, and Callie backed up until her shoulders hit the bookshelf. Some cooperated. Some didn't. The ones who didn't. Complicated things. Is that what I am? A complication? You're smarter than the others. More resourceful. Talia stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Callie could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive that clashed horribly with the conversation. I told Mr. Giordani you'd be trouble. He didn't listen. The clock on Raffaele's desk read 11:14 p.m. 46 minutes until midnight. 46 minutes until the medical team arrived, until they strapped her down and cut her open and took the only thing she had left. The burner phone pressed against her hip. One message. One chance. Talia. Callie forced herself to meet the woman's eyes. You don't have to do this. Whatever he's paying you, whatever he's promised, this isn't about money. Talia's voice hardened. This is about family, about loyalty, about debts that span generations. She reached out and touched Callie's cheek, a gesture so gentle it made Callie's skin crawl. You wouldn't understand. You come from people who think love is enough. In our world, love is a liability. A sound from the hallway, footsteps, heavy and purposeful. Multiple people, coming closer. Talia smiled. It seems your husband is home early. The office door swung open, and Callie's world collapsed into a single point of focus. Raffaele Giordani, standing in the doorway, snowflakes melting in his dark hair, his eyes finding hers with an intensity that used to make her feel cherished. Now it just made her feel hunted. Piccola Stella. His voice was soft, tender, exactly the same as it had always been. Why aren't you resting? Raffaele crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands cupping her face before she could retreat. His palms were cold from the winter air, his touch achingly familiar, and Callie hated herself for the way her body still leaned into him, muscle memory overriding every rational thought, screaming at her to run. You're pale. His thumb traced her cheekbone, his brow furrowed with what looked exactly like genuine concern. Have you been eating? Talia, why isn't she eating? I offered her tea and fruit, Mr. Giordani. She refused both. Callie. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes, dark brown, flecked with gold, the eyes she'd fallen into on their first date and never quite climbed out of. You need to take care of yourself. The baby. The words escaped like venom before she could stop them. That's all any of you care about, isn't it? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or the careful recalculation of a man who'd just realized his prey had spotted the trap. He released her chin and stepped back, his expression smoothing into unreadable marble. What have you been telling her? His voice was directed at Talia, but his eyes never left Callie's face. Nothing. She didn't discover herself. Talia moved toward the door. She found the email. She knows about the arrangements. Silence stretched between them, thick enough to choke on. Callie watched her husband's mask slip just a fraction, just enough, and saw the monster she'd been sleeping beside for 14 months. He didn't deny it, didn't explain, just stood there, calculating his next move like she was a chess piece that had wandered off the board. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. His voice was soft, almost regretful. You were supposed to stay happy, stay ignorant, stay safe. Safe? The laugh that tore from her throat was jagged, broken. You're planning to cut my daughter out of me, and then what? Relocate me? Is that what you call safe? You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The family? Your family wants me dead, Raffaele, and you're going to let them. He moved toward her, and she stumbled backward, her hip colliding with the desk. The medical consent form crinkled against her waistband. The burner phone pressed cold against her skin. 41 minutes until midnight. 41 minutes until everything ended. I would never let anyone hurt you. His voice cracked on the words, and for one horrible moment, she almost believed him. Callie, listen to me. I can fix this. I can protect you. But you have to trust me. Trust you? She shook her head slowly, tears burning at the edges of her vision. You married me to breed an heir. You let me fall in love with you while you planned my execution. And now you want me to trust you? It's not an execution. It's a procedure. You'll recover. You'll be relocated somewhere comfortable. Somewhere I'll never see my daughter again. His silence confirmed everything. The baby kicked hard, insistent, demanding attention, and Callie pressed her hand against her belly like a shield. This child was hers, would always be hers, no matter what documents they forged, no matter what procedures they planned, no matter how many lies they wrapped around the truth. Piccola Stella. Raffaele's voice dropped to a whisper. Please, don't make this harder than it needs to be. She looked at him, really looked, past the handsome face and the gentle hands, and the voice that had whispered promises against her skin in the dark. She saw a man who had never loved her, a man who had performed devotion like a role in a play, hitting every mark, delivering every line, while planning her destruction from the first moment they met. I'm not your little star. Her voice was steady now, cold in a way she hadn't known she was capable of. I'm not your wife. And I'm not your victim. She reached into her waistband and pulled out the burner phone. Raffaele's eyes widened. Where did you get that? Someone who wants me to survive. She held it up, her thumb hovering over the send button. I've already messaged them. They're coming. Whatever you planned for midnight isn't going to happen. Talia moved toward her, but Raffaele held up a hand, stopping her mid-step. His expression had shifted again, not angry, not desperate, but curious, calculating, like she'd just become interesting in a way she hadn't been before. Who gave you that phone, Callie? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer, because she didn't know. The elevator dinged in the hallway. Everyone froze. Raffaele's head turned toward the sound, his body going rigid. That's not my men. My men use the stairs. The apartment lights flickered once, then died. In the darkness, Callie ran. Co-pilot said. The darkness swallowed everything. The office, the hallway. The darkness swallowed everything, the office, the hallway, the careful choreography of her captors. Callie moved on instinct, one hand trailing the wall, the other wrapped around her belly as she stumbled toward the living room. Behind her, Raffaele's voice cut through the blackness, sharp and commanding, but she couldn't make out the words over the blood pounding in her ears. The Christmas tree was still lit. Emergency backup. Separate circuit. She remembered Raffaele explaining it months ago, proud of his attention to detail. Now those blinking lights were her beacon, guiding her toward the front door she knew would be locked, the elevator she knew wouldn't work, the windows she knew were 18 stories above concrete. Nowhere to go, nowhere safe. The elevator doors slid open. Light spilled into the penthouse, harsh, white, wrong, and 3 figures emerged in tactical formation. Not Raffaele's men. These moved differently, efficiently, their faces obscured by masks that caught the Christmas lights like fragments of broken mirror. Callista Mercer? The voice was female, calm, professional. We're here to extract you. Come with us now. Callie froze. The burner phone had worked. Someone had actually come. But who were these people? What did extraction mean in a world where that word could lead to salvation or slaughter? Don't move. Raffaele's voice came from behind her, and she felt him before she saw him, his presence filling the doorway to his office, his silhouette backlit by the city glow through the windows. Callie, step away from them. She's not your property. The masked woman stepped forward, hand extended toward Callie. Mrs. Mercer, your mother sent us. Elizabeth Mercer. She's been trying to reach you for months. Her mother. The name hit Callie like cold water, shocking her back to a life she'd left behind when she'd married into the Giordani name. Her mother, who'd begged her not to rush into marriage. Her mother, who'd stopped calling 3 months ago because Callie had stopped answering. Her mother, who had somehow found people willing to storm a mafia penthouse on Christmas Eve. You're lying. Raffaele moved closer, and Callie saw the gun in his hand, matte black, catching no light, steady as stone. Her mother is nobody. A schoolteacher from Vermont. She doesn't have these kinds of resources. Elizabeth Mercer was a schoolteacher. The masked woman's voice held a trace of something that might have been amusement. Before that, she was something else entirely. Something your family should have researched more carefully before targeting her daughter. The baby kicked. Once, twice. A reminder that time was running out, that midnight was minutes away, that every second Callie stood frozen was a second closer to losing everything. She made her choice. 3 steps forward, hand reaching toward the masked woman, her body moving before her mind could catch up. Behind her, Raffaele shouted her name, a warning, a command, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. The masked woman caught her arm and pulled her into the elevator. The doors began to close. Callie. Raffaele's voice cracked on her name, and for one horrible moment, he sounded like the man she'd married, desperate, broken, real. Please, I love you. I can explain everything. She looked at him through the narrowing gap, saw the gun still raised, saw Talia behind him, face twisted with fury, saw the Christmas tree blinking its false cheer over a scene that belonged in nightmares. You don't know what love is. Her voice was quiet, steady, final. And neither did I, until now. The doors closed. The elevator plunged downward, and Callie pressed both hands against her belly, feeling her daughter move beneath her palms. The masked woman stood beside her, silent, waiting. Above them, the penthouse grew smaller, farther, less real with every passing floor. Your mother is waiting at the safe house. The woman finally spoke. She has a lot to tell you. About your family. About his. Callie nodded, tears streaming down her face, her body shaking with exhaustion and relief and terror that hadn't quite released its grip. What's your name? She whispered. The woman pulled off her mask. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, eyes that held ghosts. Callie recognized. I'm Sarah. She smiled sad, knowing, sisterly. And I was supposed to be his first wife. Before I ran, the elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened onto a city covered in fresh snow, Christmas lights reflecting off every surface, the world impossibly beautiful for a night so full of horror. Callie stepped out into freedom, one hand on her belly, the other reaching toward whatever came next. Behind her, the clock struck midnight. Somewhere above, a man who had never loved her screamed her name into the empty dark. She didn't look back. The snow kept falling. The baby kept kicking. And for the first time in 14 months, Callie Mercer breathed without permission. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Your comments help shape the story should Callie trust Sarah. What secrets is her mother hiding? Tell me below.